All right, are we ready to do this?
I am always ready, man. Hey, the hell was that?
I have no idea.
Hey, shut the door.
Hello, Internet. My God, do we have the show for you today? We are covering the film Tenet. We have not one, but two actors from the film.
So, David, tell us, who do we have on today's episodes of Ttft?
We have John Orantes. He played one of the Red Soldiers, and we also have Jeremy Theobald, who actually went to school with Christopher Nolan and worked on their first few films together.
Was that at UCL?
Yes.
Awesome,
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah, so two great interviews coming up. This is our second episode. If you missed the first episode, check it out on our YouTube channel. We covered Black Panther. If you're not into a full 2-hour episode, go into the highlights section and find what interests you and take it in 3 and 4 minute sections.
And one thing they need to do, David, that I always want to tell them to do, I hate when other channels say it, but I say it so much better.
Subscribe.
Oh, yeah.
So why did we pick Tenet for our second film? What made us want to do that?
I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. Our show ranges films from, like I say, from the noir era to the beginning of film, black and white, classic, to the things that just came out. And being that this is one of the first films released after the pandemic and everything going on, we felt that, like, how can we be true artists and not get back out there, if while socially distancing, and get back out there into the field of the theater. And to be honest with you, when you go to the movies nowadays, it feels like you've rented out the entire theater for yourself. So we IMAXed it, and it was beautiful.
Funny story though, what happened, you thought we would have the whole theater to ourselves. But there's like maybe 4 people in the whole theater, including us. We sit down and, we paid for our seats.
Yes.
We just chose other seats when we got there and realized, we could have the best seat in the house.
When we got there, 99.9% of the theater was empty. So we was like, let's just choose the middle because, it hits you from here, hits you from there. And it's great. But then all of a sudden, I see 2 people walk in, and I'm like, I make a joke. I was like, hey, what are the odds that we're in their seats? So I see them doing these little hand movements, these little gestures, like the ventriloquists. They're signaling each other, doing all this other stuff, and all of a sudden, I'm like, what's going on? What the is going on? This comes up to me and like, hey, I think that's us. And I'm looking around, like, I know she can't be talking about the seats. Like, you think that's us? Like, I thought their friends were there or something. I'm like, come on, guys, with everything that's going on, like, you're basically being some dicks. I'm just gonna be honest with you. You're being dicks, but it's okay though. 2 dicks together make for a fun night for some people. I don't know.
Yeah, they had us move, and let's call them what they were. They were Twilight fans. They had us move so they could sit down, and then they didn't even maintain those seats for the entirety of the movie. They were constantly getting up
in their phones
because I think they went to see Edward, I think is his name in Twilight.
Right, so that's exactly what it was.
That they're getting
an adult
Christopher Robert Pattinson,
an adult performer. So that was one of the worst.
It was a great experience going back to the movies.
To be honest with you, I felt like we were in the opera scene, and I just wanted to pass out from Tenet. I just want to be honest with you, like I was in them, like I just want to pass out, man. Yeah. Somebody knocked me out with this gas. Jeez Louise, man.
So with that being said, we get out of the movie, and it was a good thing that we had like 2 weeks between watching this movie and shooting this episode, because we were almost dead silent on the way home because we did not know what to make of what we just saw. I mean, we knew many things to make of it, but I had no idea how to our minds were melted after seeing this movie. So that we're ready now to talk about it, hopefully.
Yes.
That brings us into talking during the movie. So what do you have? Before we jump ahead, it's very important to note there are going to most likely be spoilers. So if you have not seen this movie yet...
Hold on, David. Some of them don't know what a spoiler is.
Okay. So if you haven't seen it yet, completely understandable. Some of us don't feel comfortable going to the theaters yet. Some of us some of us, it isn't even released in the markets that you live in yet. So this episode will be here when you're ready to check it out after you see the film. but know that going ahead. I mean, could we even spoil anything? Because even if we tell you the ending, you're still not going to know what's happening.
But my thing is, are we even spoiling it? Haven't they already seen it? Isn't it happening now?
That's true.
So there we go. So spoiler alert, not. There we go. So on to the talking points, David. One of the things I first noticed about this film is that I didn't know anything about this film. I was home one day, and of course the trailer just came out. So I usually like to go and do my research at whoever wants to insert sponsor right here. I go do my research there. And one of the things I found fascinating is that with the film this big and with this big budget or whatnot, how the G14 level of secrecy when it came to the script, not even just with the main actors there. Of course, Michael Caine himself even said he didn't get his lines to almost the day before or the day of. And when you think about it, all you filmmakers out there who just got across the T's, dot I's, this has to be perfect. Michael Caine, the veteran, iconic actor that he is, got his lines like literally a day before, and again, still delivered in the film, but I think we can tell that he got his lines the day before. If we're being honest, we got to be honest with you guys. And even when you're talking about the secrecy of the film, you're talking about being with two of the main actors being locked inside Nolan's office, even being seeing the script from John David Washington to Robert Pattinson. So with these guys, with the acting chops that they have, having to really dig through that script. I remember when you gave me the script for Kill about 2 years ago. I couldn't stop going through it, but it's like you lock yourself in, and so it's just that was amazing for me that a big budget film like this, that the actors really don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, and what is happening? Like, so inverting. This is what Tenet is all about. So it's Christopher Nolan's take on time travel. Through inverting, and I thought it was the most interesting way to convey time travel, or at least a new take, a great new take on time travel to like, as in they are, when someone inverts, they begin moving through time in reverse from the moment that they enter the vortex. It's time travel, but it's in real time, so they're still aging. It's mind.
It really is, and when you think about it, it's really based on. I know for a fact that what he did was, even though it is inverting, he still sought out the advice of course, credible scientists who in this field knew what were going on. And one of the things that they applied to this was entropy, which is, of course, basically the second degree of thermodynamics. So they're using all of this stuff.
Motherfucker.
So they're using all of these things and to me, now I can get into this more, because it's not like you just made this up. Like, you really put time, effort, and thought into this, and you're bringing in scientists who've done this their whole life to try to make this thing work. It makes me pay attention even more. So that's why I say I dug into that before I even saw the movie, because I knew nothing about it.
Yeah. And the crazy thing that dawned on me when I was doing the deep dive is that each time somebody inverts, they're essentially creating three different, like, parallel versions, or three different versions of themselves,
if you will.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not even sure if they still exist on the same timeline, just in different points on the same timeline. Because if you think about it, when a person inverts, one, you have the inverted version of themselves that's now going backwards through time. You have the present version is right here that keeps going forward. So you have them going like this, and then eventually the inverted person, though, gets to that vortex where they can begin going forward again. So they split again at that point, and you have the third one just going forward through time, just a little bit or so, however far behind the original present version. Not to mention the one that's now inverted.
The crazy part about it is I understand exactly what you just said, which blows my mind because we've had time to digest it. I think for one of the first times, and I'm not saying it's the first time, but for one of the first times, what we've seen is to where it does not create multiple branches. In the film, they say, of course, again, spoiler alert right here, they mention to you like, hey, listen, while he sends one team's back, he sends one team forward, but he still stays present. So he has it's like basically, so there aren't different branches of the timeline. There's just at different points. So it's always like covering your mistakes and knowing what's going on. Like the present sends the future ahead and sends the past back to cover the past. So no mistakes can be made. This can't happen. So to me, it's one of the first times to where I've seen where it is like you said, inverted time travel film. But I want to go deeper on that. Like, what I was doing my research on this, I start thinking to myself, okay, like how many films have we seen that have really discussed time travel and what were the effects on them? Of course, when you want to talk about, of course, Back to the Future and our most famous invention ever, the flux capacitor.
How about Time Cop?
Oh, I love Time Cop. I didn't even have that on the list. Not only that, we have, of course, with the most recent Marvel's Avengers Endgame, of course, we had Hot Tub Time Machine. Had to throw it in there for all you hippies. Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise. We're seeing all of these things happen. Not only Edge of Tomorrow, then you're talking about Inception. Now, of course, clearly, we don't have to tell you that's a Nolan film, but when you talk about Inception, he's one of the first directors to do this. Christopher Nolan has now done 2 different time associated films where time theory is completely different in both of them. Like he is literally melting your mind with Inception, and he comes back and melts your mind now with Tenet. Here's what really blew my mind. Now, this is while I'm doing the research on this, I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, here was the beautiful part about it. The tie-in for this film was okay. We've been talking about John David Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in Tenet, which is a movie based about time, correct?
Yeah.
His father is obviously who?
Denzel.
You ever heard of this movie called Deja Vu? I think this is the first father and son combo who is awesome to both do time movies, which are both dope and awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say that, man. Did you know that?
I did not. Well, I mean, I knew that Denzel did Deja Vu, but I didn't make that correlation. That's pretty awesome.
It is, man.
All right, so let's talk about the ending, which is really the beginning, which is really just the whole thing on a loop. It's my theory. I call it the tragedy of Neil. Or Max. Dun dun dun. So Max is the boy that, and I have not committed the characters in this film, but the lead female that the protagonist is pretty much protecting. Max is her son. What if Max is Neil? What if Max grows up to be Neil? And I'll explain that. So at the end, Neil reveals to the protagonist that he recruited him in the protagonist's future, Neil's past. Neil then goes to complete the final mission, taking the bullet for the protagonist, which we see in the beginning. That's the tragedy in Neil, is that he, in this cycle, in this, like, I think of it like Groundhog Day, except it's not a 24-hour period, it's like a few lifetimes that are just stuck on this constant loop, and it doesn't matter what any of these players do, it doesn't change anything. And Neil's purpose in this loop is to sacrifice himself for the protagonist, John David Washington, so he can go on to create Tenet and recruit Neil and protect Max. It's almost like a Terminator situation where somebody goes back in time, or somebody sends somebody from the future to protect themselves as a child. I feel like something like that's going on there. So, and at the end we see the protagonist watching over Max and his mom, which kind of, I feel like, why show that unless you're setting that up? And if you think about it, like Maximilian, Maximilien, he could change that name to Neil, drop the last part, or drop the first part, and invert the last part, and that's how you end up getting Neil. So that's where my mind is going with the whole thing, that eventually...
Man, he really did a number on you, didn't he?
He grows up, Maximilian grows up, changes his name to Neil, eventually inverts on a mission to begin working back through time to the point where he takes the bullet for the protagonist, saving his life, like a cycle that keeps repeating. And that is that's like the perfect, it's like a time travel tragedy. Okay.
Now, I jokingly say he really did a number on you, because apparently he did a number on me too, because as much as I want to dispute everything you said, regardless of whatever I'm finna say out of my mouth, it cannot be credited or discredited either. So I'm just going to say bravo, young man. You made it to the end of a theory. And for me, what it was is that with this film, I feel like I was a kid in a divorce. I feel like we didn't get to see mommy. We didn't get to see daddy. But I got to come to proceedings with mommy and daddy. What I mean is, I don't feel like we truly were On purpose, I don't feel like the director wanted us to know truly what the beginning or the end was. It's like, hey, I'm gonna throw you in right here. Everything that you're seeing is the cause and effect of what you don't see. So I'm not gonna give you, hey, listen, here's A, here's Z, but I'm gonna damn sure give you B through Y. And go figure. But I'm going to give you that. It's up for, because see, now A and Z is up for what me and him are doing and what you all are going to be doing. There's going to be a million fan theories, this, that, and the other. And technically, until the director, sometimes the director doesn't even know what he wants. Art is interpreted differently, and that's the beautiful part of art. We all can look at a painting and see different things. So truly, I mean, none of us can truly be right or wrong. But for me, when I look at it, what I saw it as, at the end of it, was this. Even though simply knowing the future doesn't mean it's the future. What I took from this was this, is that John David Washington's character, while recruiting himself and doing all these things, he knew everything, almost like a godlike complex. He knew what was going to happen, because remember, with the Tenet program, you can be in the present, send someone in the past, and send someone in the future. You can be omnipresent, almost like a god. Drop that in there, dropping knowledge. See how to slow them thing, I put them things on it for you, that omnipresence. But with that being said, so he knew. Is it fair to say? Can we both agree that he knew the outcome? Is it fair to say that John David Washington's character?
See, I'm not sure about that. I feel like Neil is the only one that knows, that has already been through the whole cycle, from as far as you can go into the future to as far as you can go into the past. Because he's one, he said, my story's ending, yours is just beginning. And
he says, I'll meet you in the beginning.
Yeah.
And he does say that to him. Okay, so fair enough. I'll give you that. Neil, if you wonder who, he keeps saying Neil, we're trying to get you guys to associate that's Patterson's character. So when that happens there, the reason why I say at the end that I feel like it's one of those, like, you can still change fate, because we know what happened. At the end, John David Washington character shows back up. Knowing now you can at least admit this, at the end, he knew everything that happened. And when he meets with the Indian lady in the car, and forgive me for not knowing her name, but when he meets with her, he still gave her a chance. Like, at that very moment, she could have chose to do something that she could have not killed the girl. And she had not done that. Now the future does change because the person changed. So at the end, to me, it's a movie to where, as people, we can still change the future. That's the underlying tone I took from that. Even knowing that destruction is near, he still gave her a chance. He could have just killed her and said, no, I'm going to just kill her. He watched her. He gave her up until that very moment. So she already knew, because early in the film, he told her what was going to happen. Yeah. Yet she still says, it's nothing I do. He's like, yes, you can. So at the middle of the film, he's telling her about the end. Like, you can do this. He's giving her a pep talk. Like, I'm coming back to kill you in like 3 days. This is your chance. Yeah. What'd she do? Shut her nose and spite her face. Yeah. That's my theory.
I'm in no position to, literally zero position to argue with that in any way. I can't even really hold up my own theory, let alone push against yours.
Look what you did, Chris. Congratulations.
Just like on the call with Jeremy that we'll get to later, he had a theory. So we had 3 different competing theories on one episode about this movie, and I can't decipher which one.
4. John David Washington's too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well.
So
the movie itself, like what you're saying, the how the word's a palindrome, how you can go forwards or backwards with it. The whole movie, that came from like the Seder Square.
I did that game with the 5 little, because the characters were named after them, correct?
Well, I'll get to that in the big Fikes. As far as how the Seder Square plays into many aspects of the movie, but Tenet being the center point of the Seder Square, I think it's interesting that, like, I feel like this movie is almost like a Pink Floyd album. You have to put it on the record player and play it in reverse in order to fully get the message that the creator is wanting to put out there. And I honestly believe if we played this movie backwards, or not actually backwards, but chronologically backwards, like this scene, then this scene, and this scene going in reverse, I feel like it would act at almost like a Seder Square, where it doesn't matter what direction you turn it, it's still going to play out the same way.
Check this out. I came up with this when I was doing my research. I came up with this. I said, if I had to describe this film to anyone, and I think you may agree with me on this. This may be our one time we agree with the whole thing. If someone said, give me this film in one sentence, which is almost impossible, I would say, if a kaleidoscope and a Rubik's Cube had a baby, it would be called Tenet.
Kaleidoscope And Aruba. Yeah, yeah. And if I could sum it up into like one word for people, for Christopher Nolan fans, I would just say it is Memento on heroin.
That's for all my
Or
drug
no,
users.
actually, I'd say it's Memento on Adderall.
Oh, so now you're just focused.
Yeah, because Memento on heroin is just kind of like I'm going. Actually, it could be because you're going through time really slow.
And it's at this very moment where we tell the kids of America, dare, don't you do drugs, kids. We're from the 80s. We didn't do them, and look how we turned out. Next.
But the coolest thing about the movie, like what I could take, because with something like this, at first you just have to digest it on an abstract level. Like, what is it trying to say abstractly? You're going to break your brain trying to figure out what's literally taking place. And I could only imagine what the storyboards must have looked like in the production room, because Christopher Nolan actually did, like we heard with Jeremy, they did shoot everything forward and backwards. So every scene shot twice, plots here and plots here later in the movie, and then circling back to those plots somehow and doing them, shooting them again, not just reversing stuff. No green screens used, like unbelievable. So you take all that, that's great, but on like a human emotion level, what I really took away from it was how it challenges our ideas about fate, predestination, free will. Like, are we predetermined to do the things that we're going to do? And you touched on that with like you think they can change things. I am not so sure. That's the only part about your theory that, and I don't have a reasonable explanation to explain why, but just the way things play out in Tenet, it just feels like they're on a predetermined loop. And
well, no, because I'm going to argue against my own argument now, so I can at least hedge my bets here. Because part of me made me feel that way, because they a couple of times throughout the film they definitely mention it and they make it clear. That's one of the things they make clear, that we're not changing anything. We're just pulling the bullet and putting it back into the gun. It's still going to fire no matter when. We're just pulling it out for right now to do whatever they're doing. But they make that clear several times. It's just, for me at the end, it's John David Washington's character, even knowing John David Washington's character, even knowing at that time, when he comes in at the end and with that Indian lady, it's almost like even if she was on a predetermined, part of him still wanted her to change. So yeah, when you speak about that, I almost have to side with you and say that throughout the movie, they definitely drilled into our head that things are predetermined, but we still can go back and, I guess, affect the past and the present, but the present and the past determines the future, which cannot be changed. Is that fair?
That's fair, and I think we could also agree on this. Sater, the villain in the movie,
so-called villain,
he's got like the cancer, and he's got the life thing on him that's gonna take the whole world out with him when he goes.
Right.
Worst suicide bomber in history.
Oh, definitely. Horrible. Talk about falling for the banana in the tailpipe. Good grief. Jeez Louise.
All right, sir, are you ready for some big Fikes?
I love big facts. And here we go. Royal went, for all you out there betting last week, Royal went 50-50. Wasn't too bad here, but I'm pretty sure this is going to take a deep dive in the wrong direction. Go ahead, sir.
Here we go. Number 25, Twilight World. So the code phrase, "we live in a Twilight world," is used several times in the film, and it just so happens to be a comical coincidence that Robert Pattinson is best known for his role in the film.
Twilight.
Number 24, The Little Things. In the film, the colors red and blue, they're used to differentiate between forward motion and inverted. Red moving forward, blue moving backwards. Whenever the focus is on the blue team, the score actually changes to include a motif which is played backwards. Just little subtle things. And
things subtle little.
Sticking to that red-blue theme, the Warner Brothers and Syncope images shaded red and blue in the opening logos.
5 quick seconds to that. We both know that they never let anybody messing with that logo. So to me, hey, he has some pull over there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll get to his pull. This motherfucker has destroyed so many.
Oh my God.
All right, number 23. I love Christopher Nolan, but man, does he hate an IMAX camera. 23, Clever Motherfucker. During the climactic battle scene, the red team and blue team both have 10 minutes to complete the final mission. So you have 10 forwards, 10 backwards,
which equals Tenet.
Crazy.
How does the commercial go? brilliant. It's lit.
Number 22, and a lot of these are going to be kind of throwbacks to hip-hop references as the titles, and that will come
Two hops this time.
Which Christopher Nolan in Tenet, this was the first time he used a hip-hop track in the credits of his film.
Growing, I see, culturally. I like that, Christopher. Or Sea-Dog.
Number 22, reverse! There are no green screens used in Tenet, just practical effects. This includes the inversion sequences, when Christopher Nolan chose to shoot each scene twice, once moving forward, once with the actors doing everything backwards. And
Hard, man, it's hard.
Number 21, repeat offender. Actor Jeremy Theobald, coming up later in the show, appears briefly as a steward in the kitchen scene with Michael Caine. Jeremy Theobald went to school with Nolan, where they made a few short films together. He also produced and played the lead in Nolan's first feature, Following, as well as a small role in Batman Begins. And Tenet, of course.
Great job.
Number 20, Bat Signal. On the first day of shooting Tenet, Robert Pattinson received the news that he'd been cast as Bruce Wayne in The Batman. An interesting coincidence, considering, Christopher Nolan's fantastic
Batman Begins.
And
The Dark Knight.
Yes,
there
please
we go.
Keep going. The whole damn trilogy.
Goodness, why so serious?
Best contribution. Number 19, All About the Washingtons. Tenet is the most expensive film ever made to have a person of color as the solo lead.
Well, guys, I was going to say that, so let me...
Damn near one of the most expensive films ever made, period.
Yeah, and in case you didn't hear him, because that was on my paper, Tenet with a $205 million budget is the most expensive film to have an African American as the solo lead. Not as a group, not as a cast, as a solo lead. Shout out to John David, Big Money, Baller, Washington.
And another check in Tenet's just doing first things, Pandemic Cinema, number 18. Tenet is the first major studio film to be released during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, and I'm just letting you know I was set up for this next fact. He think I can't read the good thing. I know how to foreshadow. So yes, this did happen, but go ahead, read it. When I was in the film, I asked him, we were in a particular scene, and the scene was just so clear and pristine, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And I did lean over and ask him, and I whispered it, okay, my man car got put. I whispered like, hey, you think that's green screen? Almost as if Christopher Nolan was sitting next to me, and you replied with?
Number 17, it must be fake. So we are talking about that scene where John David Washington's protagonist character meets with Kat on the terrace atop the cliff. It is in fact real, and when we were sitting there, I said, this, knowing Christopher Nolan, it must be real, but it looks so good that it
fake.
Yes, yeah, it looked beyond real.
It's like that scene from A Few Good Men when they're driving around Guantanamo Bay, and I'm like, that's a painting in the background, but it wasn't. This was real. IMAX, shout out.
Shot it in Italy somewhere. Number 16, lame editing. This was Christopher Nolan's first time working with editor Jennifer Lame, best known for her work on Hereditary.
Wasn't it the guy he normally worked with working on Dune?
No, that was the composer. Lee Smith, the editor he usually works with, was working on 1917.
1917, thank you. Good pull.
So, real quick while we're right here, because Hereditary has just come up. Do you want to speak on your experience with Hereditary?
All I know is there's another movie that came out after that you told me about that you like, and I'm just going to stop there. My mom told me if you don't have anything good to say about anything, don't say anything about it.
That's going to be on the season 2 then. I'm just making notes.
I've seen it.
Number 15 is Timeless. While much of the imagery in the film has been brewing in Christopher Nolan's brain for at least 20 years prior to making the movie, he worked on the specifics of the screenplay for about 6 years, a story that quite appropriately spans through time.
I love it. I know what it's like to have an idea in your head. Shout out Bill the Collector. See you soon.
Number 14, Road Trip. About 1.6 million feet of IMAX footage was shot for the film. This broke Christopher Nolan's own record, which was already in the number 1 spot. 1.6 million feet. That's 303 miles of film. That's enough film to stretch from New York, right past the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia, through Baltimore, over Capitol Hill, across the Potomac River, and past the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., strolling down 395 on the 95 South into Virginia, where it would finally stop 5 hours away in the unincorporated community of Ruther Glen. What the
So what you're saying is that it's long.
It is so much film. 1.6 million feet. That's
a lot
crazy.
Of feet. Pizza.
Number 13, camera casualties. So this is what I was talking about later.
Do you even need to read this? You've been telling me about this for years. Do you even need to read this? Speak from the heart, man. Speak from the heart. Stop.
No, I do need to read this because I have the numbers in here, and I'm gonna put things up on the screen to show like rest in peace to these poor cameras.
All right, let me look at them.
Christopher Nolan trusted all right. So I already told you about the Dark Knight issues. I didn't even know that he put more cameras at risk in this one. Christopher Nolan trusted Robert Pattinson with way more than just a role he was tasked with bringing to life. Robert Pattinson was also responsible for the life or death of one of the most expensive cameras in the world. Pattinson revealed that he did much of his own stunt driving for the film, including one particular sequence where he and John David Washington were in a BMW with an IMAX camera rigged to the hood. He could scarcely see anything through the windshield, and a slight turn left or right would result in the rig hitting the road. So that's on his last film. He lucked out. And actually, thank you to Robert Pattinson for not destroying
Hell of a driver.
the camera.
Hell of a driver.
Sorry, Christopher Nolan, not this time. Nolan is notorious for destroying the $500,000 IMAX. That's a $500,000 IMAX cameras.
So $500,000 is $500,000. Just want to be clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He sent one to camera heaven during The Dark Knight. In The Dark Knight Rises, another one bit the dust. In 2017's Dunkirk, he put one in a plane and then crashed it into the f***ing ocean. He assumed that it would float long enough to allow them the chance to recover it. It sank instantly. Luckily, divers were able to recover it.
The dad.
Shockingly, it survived. Anything for the shot, I suppose.
Well, I just want to say real quick that in the Dunkirk, if he would have just hired John David Washington's father, who was in flight, that the plane wouldn't have sunk.
Yeah, I don't know, would it?
You saw what happened. He flew a plane inverted. L-C-L Royal. Don't slow that down and make me look bad.
So slow it down. Okay. Number 12, 2 tickets, please. The working title for Tenet was Merry-Go-Round.
Now, I actually did know that. When you think about it, normally when people do the fake titles, it's to completely throw you off. But when you're really thinking about it, round and round we go. Hey, round and round we go. That's what's actually happening in the film, round and round. So that's pretty smart.
Hey, the straight-to-DVD B movies out there, they're going to be knocking off Tenet, like Tornado to Twister or Jurassic Dinosaurs to Jurassic Park. Merry-Go-Round. Do your time travel. Try to.
Or for my cereal fans out there, Frosty Flakes to Frosted Flakes. You know what I mean?
Number 11, physicists approved. While the film isn't going for precise scientific accuracy, it is roughly based on actual science. Christopher Nolan asked physicist Kip Thorne, who worked with him on Interstellar, to read the script and assist with the concepts.
Fun fact, I actually worked with Kip. Actually, no, I didn't. I'm just sweating. It sounded good.
There.
Scared for a second. You're finna listen.
I was like, okay. We got 7 minutes left. Let's see.
Let's get Kip on the phone.
Number 10, fast and reversing. That was the best I could come up with at 4 o'clock in the morning. That sounds like Fast and Furious. Okay. Fast and reversing. The fantastic, exhilarating car chase sequence was pulled off with absolutely no visual effects at all.
It's true.
20 of Los Angeles' top drivers were assembled and later joined by experienced stunt drivers from around the world to achieve the insane reverse action that was captured. One of the members of that team was, you actually bring up in our interview, Jim Wilkie, who famously flipped the Joker truck in The Dark Knight.
I'm not going to lie. They're at the top of their... When you talk about top of their game, those guys were at the top of their game.
Yeah. Number 9, money ain't a thing. This is Christopher Nolan's most expensive original film and one of the most expensive original films in the history of films upon its release, with a production budget of $205 million.
One of the things I don't think you guys heard with that real quick before he moves on is that, again, this came from, there was no source material for this film. Normally budgets of $200 million, from $100 million, hell, $50 million aren't given for something that doesn't have a comic book or a screenplay or a playwright, some diary someone found. There's no source material for this. They were like, you see Nolan. And as we found out, his first budget was what?
$6,000.
And now $205 million. Kids, can't we all dare to dream?
Yeah. Number 8, Breath of Life. Composer Ludwig Göransson incorporated Christopher Nolan's breathing as part of the score used around the antagonist in the film. The sound was achieved with Nolan breathing heavily into a microphone and Göransson manipulating it into uncomfortable sounds. And Nolan isn't the only visionary director to literally breathe their breath of life into their films. Stanley Kubrick dubbed his breathing for 2001 A Space Odyssey.
Real quick, if you don't mind, fun fact here, real quick. With Ludwig, I wanted to kind of speak to that for about 30 seconds if I could. One of the beautiful things about this, one of the first films that me and you did was Black Panther. And with Ludwig, of course, he composed that because he also worked with Michael B. Jordan on Fruitvale. So when you really talk about a tie-in to an episode, I just really love that we can really, it's almost like it's meant to be. It's like we couldn't fate Tenet. It's just,
yeah,
right.
The synergy is like boiling up inside of me.
Right, you know what I'm saying? It just made my blood boil. Like, yeah.
Terry! Call back. All right, cancel Terry. Hashtag. Number 7, Hitch Slapped. Robert Pattinson stated that he drew inspiration from Christopher Hitchens for his character's accent, intonation, and mannerisms. Pattinson never uses his real London accent when playing British characters. He said he feels fake when he uses his own accent for a role. It just, if he just plays himself on screen, he feels like a fraud.
I can see where he's coming from.
Number 6, Practically Real. You will be very surprised to find out that this visually stunning, reality-bending film only contains 280 visual effects shots. This is less than most romantic comedies. This is also a low number in comparison to other Christopher Nolan projects, with The Dark Knight featuring 650 VFX shots, The Dark Knight Rises with 450, Inception had about 500, and Dunkirk had a surprisingly low 429.
Real quick about Dunkirk, real quick before you go, if I'm not mistaken here, that also had... Okay, he's going to fact check me on this since I interrupted. Honorable mention that with Dunkirk, Michael Caine voice was used in that film as well. Because he always works with Nolan.
The voice, yeah.
The voice.
Voice only,
Boom.
yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Number 5, Puzzling. The word Tenet originated from the Sator Square, a puzzle that dates back to the ruins of Pompeii. It's a 5x5 square containing 5 five-letter words: Satyr, Arepo, Tenet, Opera, and Rhodes. No matter what direction you rotate the square, these 5 words appear horizontally and vertically. Tenet being the only palindrome able to be read in reverse from any direction. All 5 words actually appear in the film. The film's antagonist is named Andrei Satyr. The forger responsible for the painting and Kat's former lover is named Lawrence Arepo. The security company in the film is called Rhodes. And of course, the organization that the protagonist is recruited into is called Tenet.
Awesome. He actually recruited himself, but yeah.
Yeah. Number 4, really? A real 747 was purchased, crashed into a real hangar, and really exploded in the iconic scene from the film. Christopher Nolan originally planned to use miniatures, but it actually turned out to be less expensive to buy a real f***ing plane. Number 3, working in reverse. Not only did the lead actors have to perform stunts backwards, they actually had to learn how to speak in reverse for their roles. Number 2, Top Secret. And you brought this up earlier. There was so much secrecy surrounding Tenet. Robert Pattinson was only allowed to read the script in a locked room at Warner Brothers Studio. Michael Caine wasn't even allowed to read the script. He was only given his scenes to read before shooting.
No, keep reading, David, please.
Oh yes, you talking about yes. Okay, this was my number 1 new composer. This was Christopher Nolan's first time working with composer Ludwig Göransson. His go-to Hans Zimmer was busy working on Dune, a longtime passion project of his. And this actually draws a nice clean connection back to the film in our previous episode, Black Panther. Ludwig Göransson was the composer for Black Panther, which he won an Oscar for. Zimmer is actually friends with Göransson and suggested him to Nolan, which is how they ended up working together. And and they actually had to shoot the Göransson because of the
he shot it before so they can match it up as they were filming.
And during the because of the pandemic, to finish it, they actually had people doing the recordings from their homes, and he was putting them
The
together.
musicians,
Yeah.
yeah, he definitely did that. And actually, I know that once they did the recording, they actually practiced. Of course, nobody wants to hear this, but maybe you do. Social distancing. They had to take the recording rooms down from 11 people down to 6. So that's big adjustments, man. But hey, he did it. Anytime you can make Wakanda sound good in the world of Tenet, hey, you got my vote.
That concludes Big Fikes.
All right, all my popcorn fanatics out there, it's time for your favorite segment, 7 Minutes in. That's right here. And this segment is brought to you by Pixlr Pictures and I Am Media. You need something done? He'll do it because I won't anymore. However, you need some big voiceover guy? That's me. You need some guy to edit the hell out of your shit? That's him. So guys, hey, this is what we do. And again, now we're back. So this week we're talking about 7 Minutes in Heaven. That's our version of, hey, that's the top 3 scenes for each one of us. So we usually boomerang this thing, go back and forth, or we kind of merry-go-round it. See what I did there?
Yeah.
He's gonna he's gonna put some funk on that. So with that being said, to me, my first one was, of course, the opera scene. I mentioned it to you, like the first 60 to 90 seconds of the film, it starts with a slow crawl back. They're coming out, like, it gave me a Dark Knight feel. They're coming through the back of the kitchen, like when the Joker came in, when they were having the big boss meeting in the Dark Knight. And, like, I love a film. This is ironic because I'm being ironic here because what I'm gonna say later. But I love a film that doesn't just give it to me right away. Like, yeah, throw me into it. Like me and you, like you bet not get up. You bet not blink. So with that opera scene, to me, the hardest thing to do is to control the crowd. And when you saw these panning shots, yeah, there were some cuts here and there, but it didn't make me feel like it was a Michael Bay film and it's a cut every 0.3 seconds or somebody's whisking the camera around. You saw perfectly planned shots. If one thing we've talked about from our research to the people we've interviewed is that Christopher Nolan is very planned and precise. He thinks about things 2 decades in advance, and then, of course, according to him, over 6 years fleshes these ideas out. So that opening opera scene, knowing that how they reconstructed that opera, you have to have so many people. It doesn't take one director to do this. You're working with multiple directors. While action is happening, people passing out, making sure no one looks at the camera. I'm looking for mistakes, and I am so drawn in from the beginning that I have to be there. Yeah. And if you can do that to me right then and there, you've gotten me. So to me, it's hard for a top 3 scene to be an opening scene for me, but that opening scene does it for me, man, and it draws me in.
That's a good one. I like shortly after that scene, after he takes the suicide pill as the test, and he wakes up. That scene when the girl's explaining inversion to him, that was so interesting the way they broke that down, and she showed him how the bullet goes in reverse, and he couldn't take that one because it didn't come from him, and he had the it was really cool. Like, it didn't get too pseudoscience-y. That you're like, it was just enough of like exposition. To keep it engaging, to keep the pacing going, and again, it, like what I said in the earlier, it brought up that whole conversation about cause and effect and fate and free will. That I thought that scene was like beautifully poetic.
If they were going to give you any sort of pseudo-psycho or like training wheels, that was the only time you got any explanation about what was getting ready to happen. But sometimes, as they say, ignorance is bliss. I wish I wouldn't have known that, because then I could have, in my mind, I would have been like, oh, I know what's going on. But yeah, that was definitely one of them for me. Listen, spoiler alert again, but right now, when I saw, just knowing what happens in the film or what I perceive happens, the hallway scene to where John David Washington is fighting what he does not know him is himself. One of them is fighting in, it's like the red-blue concept. One of them is fighting in real time, but the other one is fighting in reverse. And you're at first, when we first see it, it looks like some voodoo scene. You see him moving like he's possessed, like all these possessed. I'm like, first off, great callback to the 70s and 80s when you actually had to really make effects. It was just not like sitting down at the computer and throw it there. Like, no, like they took time into this. I'm like, goodness, did True Blood meet the Matrix or something? Like, it was happening like that. And then to find out what we found out at the end, like, you see them going. Go ahead. You might want to speak to that.
No, just speaking of callbacks to the 80s, like all the actors when they're in reverse, they're not being reversed digitally, they are actually reverse performing. And like thinking of 70s and 80s films, I think of Bruce Campbell in Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. He was like the master of, like Sam Raimi would shoot most stuff where he would he would actually perform in reverse, so Sam Raimi could digitally reverse it in post, so it looked like he was going forward just really unnaturally, or flying across the room. Is the only way he could do it was do it in reverse and then reverse it in post and have him go forward. But I thought that, and the choreography to choreograph somebody, it's like a whole new way of fighting when somebody is fighting invert and the other one's fighting forward, but they're still interacting with each other somehow.
But what's the third level plane of that? That both of them somewhat know what's going on.
Yeah,
it's like
they're like, oh, let me get past. Let me get past.
It's crazy. One's thinking about what I can know what you're doing, but I didn't know you were going to do it in reverse. Yeah, now I'm confused again. So it's not a fair fight again. It's crazy, man. But yeah, go. That was my second one.
My second scene is actually so you like the hallway scene in there. I chose the whole umbrella over that whole thing. That whole airport scene when they're holding their breaths as they're trying to hack the security locks to each room. It felt like a nerve-wracking video game in like seeing it like cinematically. The choreography of the fight, like I said, going forward and reverse, all the way to the punchline at the end of the airport scene where after all that craziness, they're trying to get through the locks, holding their breath when the air is sucked out of the room, fighting each other forward and reverse, finally get into that one room where right before they open the door, they both just fall down perfectly in sync, which was... that was like, there were so many moments like that where it shows they showed you that even though in the timeline that we're seeing things play out as, the protagonist had just met Neil. This is one of their first times working together, but you know that's not the case when you see the way they're so in sync, how they fall down like that, and also when they go and meet the Indian actress, which again I failed to get her name too, but it's actually her first movie filmed in the United States, or first United States film role. But when he goes and meets her, that same thing, which was a hilarious moment when it was time for them to escape. As soon as he realized it was time to escape and the escape route was going to be jumping over the balcony, within a split second, you already see Robert Pattinson falling from a roof above. It was humorous, but at the same time, it sold that like these people have worked together for a lot longer than we've seen in this linear timeline that we're watching.
Furthermore, before you get off of that, I would definitely have to agree with you because in my research of everything that happened, Christopher Nolan, of course, being a fan of Bond films, that's no secret. People know that. But one thing that he did and said was normally he'll let people watch films that influence him. He didn't want anybody to watch these films, and I can see why, because it gave it its own unique genre of a Bond-esque type style. Because like you mentioned, I've seen a billion Bond films. I've never seen him right before somebody walks in the door. I've seen him come up, pull out gadgets. They were in sync, laying down, getting up, doing what they have, having to have that lingo. And like it was a newer version of swag, a millennial version of swag. Like they had done it so many times. To them, it was just a performance. That's what made it beautiful. It wasn't like they didn't know what was going on. Everything like was a performance. So I agree with you on that. Now for me,
he with the Bond films, that I'm glad you brought that up, because he said he wanted to capture the memory, the feeling, rather than actual mocking it or mimicking it. And I am the same exact way. Like when I did Never Go Back, I did not it was a movie about escaping into nature. I stayed away from watching Into the Wild. I didn't watch Wild with Reese Witherspoon when it came out around that same time, because I didn't. It's that I'm Gonna Kill Someone This Friday. When we did that, I stayed away from all psychological thrillers, because it is that you don't want to accidentally or like subconsciously put something in your film because it's fresh on your brain and your brain remembers it as like an idea that you came up with. It's so much nicer to just where these films are coming from that you're making, to just create that energy and off the memory of it.
I mean, I have to agree, because who did those directors before them watch? Like, I mean, at some point you can be inspired by someone, but you just don't want to imitate them. My third one, it was very, very tough, very, very tough, is that I have to go with I have to, at the end of the day, I have to take it back to the airport scene. The fact that you brought it up earlier, the 747. First and foremost, this was never planned to be an actual 747. I think this may have been one of the only CGI. They're going to go with a miniature model way to do this. But blindly enough, they were searching for location scouting, and they came across this empty airport with abandoned and broken down planes, if you will. And so, the fact that one of his head stuntmen had to acquire a license to be able to not even drive the plane, but just the towy, whatever thingy he's finna show on the screen now. Ding, make me look educated. The fact that he had to drive this machine, this automobile, to be able to pull this 747. So that's one aspect of it. Then the fact that now you have to have people choreographed to be running around this, and the fact that you actually crashed it. To me, that's like, you want to know, when you were a kid, when you were doing this with airplanes and stuff, like, no, like when you're doing all this stuff, like that's the biggest thing ever. That is the greatest thing ever, to become a grown ass kid, man, and be able to say, I want that plane, mom being studio. I want to crash it into that building being dad. Can I do it? We just want to have room. We're going to have so much space for so much more activities when I crash this plane through this building. And they actually did it, man. And so for me, that's like, man, listen, you had filmmakers around the world with their dicks on hard. Like, I wish someone could let me do that. And in fairness, it wasn't even satire. It went with the script. It didn't feel forced. It wasn't so, oh, we just got to do this because we got it. And so for me, that was my third one, man. I mean, kudos all to the crew. To more so to the crew than the director had the balls to do it, but actually trained professionals had to get there and do this. Yeah. So to me, that I got to give it to that, man.
My third one is when the protagonist, John David Washington, meets Sator. That was a great moment of the hero of the film meeting the villain of the film. The intensity was there, the tension, but interwoven within it was just the witty dialogue. It was a perfect balance to introduce this rivalry that is apparently just going to keep going. And it had one of the best lines in the whole movie when Sator says, "Have you slept with my wife?"
Not yet.
And then he says, "How do you want to die?" And the protagonist says, "Old." And then Sator's like, "You chose the wrong profession." That, like, the whole that is funny in itself. Like, you could just say those lines to somebody, like, those are good punchlines in a dialogue scene. But then when you add it to the context of the whole film and who the protagonist is and what his role is, it goes from being just that's clever to that's like almost f***ing genius.
I mean, yeah. I can't disagree with you. I mean, we were sitting there, and to me, that's one of the things where we really talk about. And I want to stop right there. I don't want to go in right there, so I'm gonna let you end it right there because that was good. Because it's going to lead into something else we're going to say.
Sounds good. So let's move on to Scene Stealers.
And this week, brought to you from the film Tenet, we had a lot of amazing performances in here. And for me, if I can just say on my end, I know we haven't come to a show where we had the same person, so I hope that this is the same here. But even if we do have the same person, I don't think we're going to have it for the same reason. So for me, I'm going to go with Mr. John David Washington. The reason why I am going with John David Washington, and it was so hard for me to do this, and I'm going to tell you why, because he goes by the character of a named Ricky Jared in the show Ballers, and on the very first episode of the show Ballers, he drops a line that says, why would I go to Jacksonville? That's where careers go to die. And if anybody knows, I'm like a Jaguar fan, and so that's why you have to understand that even I can set my differences apart here and say that he still was for me, he was the best artist of this film, and I'll explain why. First and foremost, let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room. Denzel Washington is your father, and to me, from what I've seen, you're right up there with King Griffey Jr., right up there with like all the people who've had to, like Angela Jolie having to live up to John Wood, like just all the children that have had to live up to their parents, not just being superheroes, but like larger than life figures, and not just, it's like, okay, you grow up and your dad's like you're on TV, it's like, oh yeah, great, but no, your dad's that motherfucker. You know what I'm saying?
He's like Jesus.
Yeah,
and
but
he's having to live up
no,
to God.
he's not like Jesus. He is Jesus Shuttlesworth. We went over this. Come on, I'm gonna get him there, guys. Don't worry. By the end of the season, he's gonna know who Jesus Shuttlesworth is. But seriously, I have to give it to him because living under that pressure and knowing that you have to go out there every time, and it's not like I have to say it's not like he has the longest IMDb in the world. You know, he has some credits here and there, so you can't say his dad just been lofting him softball. So that's one thing, but that's just not enough. Let's talk about the film. Let's talk about the range of this young man. When I watched him, I didn't see Denzel one time. Mm-hmm. Did I feel swag? Yes. Did I feel confidence? Yes. Did I feel somebody that could articulate themselves? Yes. Did I see somebody that knew at every given moment they were comfortable in every given situation? That, you know what, matter of fact, I want to go back and change one of my best scenes. When that motherfucker leaves from the meeting with old girl and walks back through that restaurant and calmly beats their ass. That's the first time I've seen somebody calmly beat somebody's ass.
I ordered my hot sauce an hour ago.
And dropped some chicken Little George shit before he went in there like, hey, till you do right by me. So my point is this. The range, man, like he was just no moment was too big for him. You felt like he could you or deliver a baby at any given moment. And to me, that was one of the biggest things. And so one of the last things I want to say is that we talked about this earlier. I'm pretty sure he didn't know it at the time, but you're such an inspiration, unlike Terry Gilliam would want people to be inspiration to kids out there. So he was such an inspiration to find out like this is the biggest budgeted film to have an African American as a solo lead. It's just like, not to say, oh yeah, we can finally do it. It's just like, man, like, and you killed it. Like you killed it. So for me, man, I got to give it to you, man. Shout out, brother. Nothing but respect to you, man. I'll see you soon, coworker.
I agree with everything that you just said, and I'm glad that you said it. So I can still, I picked somebody else, but I'm glad that got out there because I agree with it. I wanted to say that, but I at the end of the day, everyone in this movie was pretty much great, with the exception of Michael Caine, because he wasn't bad. He was just Michael Caine.
Call me Michael. I'm sorry.
It felt effort. And when I found out later in doing the fact checking that, or the deep dive, that he didn't
got his
get
lines
his
like
till,
walking
right
into the
before.
studio.
But you can kind of see that. You can kind of see where he doesn't. His performance reflects that he doesn't know where the context of where he fits into the context of everything in the story. Mm-hmm. And something about Michael Caine, it just felt effortless, but not in a good way, like a complacent kind of effortlessness. But John David Washington, like everything you said, I totally agree with. He is a quiet powerhouse. He in a lot of ways, he reminds me of Chadwick Boseman in the way that he can portray so much power so subtly, and it still comes off. And that's something that I don't even think John David Washington's father can do. You might.
Oh no, I'm not disagreeing.
Okay,
that's what makes it beautiful. I don't see either one of them being the same. It's like apple and orange. Like no, you're just great. You would have been great regardless.
Yeah,
and I feel that. Yeah.
Kenneth Branagh, I hope I'm getting his name right. He was fantastic as Sator. The emotion that he brought to that villain, again, like our Black Panther episode, I think that he gave the villain like a real humanity. Even with this, like, this is a clear-cut, dry villain. This guy is terrible. He wants to destroy the whole world with him. So he is absolutely terrible. But Kenneth, the actor, brought a real sense of humanity to those emotions that the guy was going through.
I 100% agree. Can I give you a fun fact before you name the next person?
Yes.
Fun fact about him. You ever heard of this movie called Much Ado About Nothing?
Uh-huh. I heard about it. I have not seen it.
Guess who he directed? Denzel Washington.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. He also directed.
I'm doing my little thing. Hold on.
I'm glad you stopped me. I wasn't sure about what I was about to say. Yeah, he was great. But my number one pick goes to Robert Pattinson. Neil, his performance felt effortless. Not in the Michael Caine way, but in the good natural way, where he lights up the screen with like cool, dry charisma. Every time he comes onto the screen, it's just cool. Mm-hmm. And like you said about child actors in the last episode, or actors in general who get kind of pigeonholed into one particular character. Yeah. he has so gracefully broke out of that, and he did it by, he didn't just jump from Edward to a $205 million movie. He did a lot of independent films that allowed him to explore different characters, and one of those independent films, I think it was called Good Times, Christopher Nolan saw, and that's what made him that's what made him consider him for the role in Tenet. So yeah, Robert. And what John David Washington had going against him for me in this is that I had less to compare him against, as like other things that he's been in. What put Robert Pattinson over the mark for me over John David Washington was that I was comparing him to who I've seen in Twilight, and that just blows me away how he went from that to what we see today and things like The Lighthouse, and it actually makes me kind of excited for the Batman.
Definitely, I can agree with you as far as the reasons why you chose as well. Again, while we do have two totally different choices, I think neither one of us are wrong in this, because again, they both like I say held their own in this, and like I say, anytime they were sharing screen together, I never felt like there was anyone leading anyone. It was you be great at what you're at, and we'll do this dance, and I'll be great at what I'm at.
So at the end of this season, like we've mentioned, we'll be doing 13 episodes this season, 13 films, and each episode will be picking one actor at the end of this segment. At the end of the season, we'll take all 13 of those actors, put them up on the board, and remove them until only one remains the Best Actor of Season 1 award. So, who did we have? Who won? Refresh their memories for the Black Panther episode. It was your pick. Who won?
The young lady that played the character Okoye. That was my first pick, and yours?
My pick was Michael B. Jordan, and of course, yours won. So, this time around, we have John David Washington and Robert Pattinson head-to-head. Who is going on the board to go against Okoye at the end of the season? Should we leave? Can we agree that they are both equally great in this film and complement each other? With that, and in the spirit of Tenet, could we leave this up to a coin flip?
We can, because the coin is going to decide. So, hold on.
And I'm just going to let it land on the table.
You have a coin or a Pirate of the Caribbean shield? What is that?
It's a dime, a 10.
Oh, there we go. Oh, I see what you did there. All right, so who's the head, though? Who's the tail?
Well,
front and back.
Let's head John David Washington, tail
okay,
Robert Pattinson.
There we go.
All right, here we go.
Congratulations, Mr. Twilight, Batman, Robert Pattinson. You're on the board.
All right, that was easy. That was a lot better than what we got into in episode
You don't want to. You don't want to get into a Killmonger.
Check it out right here.
And you want? I was gonna say also make sure you can check out all our stuff. But if you're gonna check out our stuff, we'll tell you about it, so you don't have to look for it. All you got to do is hit subscribe
and hit the little bell too, so you get the notifications when we post episodes. And I have to apologize. We post an episode every Thursday. We post highlights every Tuesday. And I forgot about the fact that if you hit the bell, you get notified every time we post a video. Well, this Tuesday we posted 30 videos for the Black Panther highlights. I will not do that in the future. I will post the highlights in a way where they all get dropped at the same exact time, so you only get one notification on Tuesday.
He didn't want to tell you guys we went down one subscriber because he was all in there ish.
Yeah. So I'm putting that out there. You don't even have to say anything, and I hear you, and it will be corrected, adjusted. We will move forward amicably.
Oh, wow. A little 40-year-old version drop right there. Or should I say a little Sunny Fit.
Yeah.
Go down the rabbit hole.
That concludes Scene Stealers. And what do we have next?
Coming up next, Durden, my co-host of Ttft, which you can find on Thursdays and highlights on Tuesdays with 1 not 35 notifications. Coming up next, we now have You're Gonna Need a Bigger Boat. And if you don't know, that's a Jaws reference. And if you didn't know, you shouldn't be on this channel. I'm lying. Please subscribe. David, what do you have first?
So I only have one line because
that's what the cokehead said.
I just thought it was brilliant and poetic, and I like lines in films that can also work as a proverb for life. This was delivered by the protagonist. he says even the dead need allies, and again, just like so many lines in Tenet, this works as a standalone proverb, but when you apply it to the context of the whole story in Tenet, it becomes it becomes very powerful, because I can't even articulate it because my mind is still partially melted from this film, especially rehashing it all now. But just trust me, because.
All right, for me, I have first off an honorable mention. My honorable mention is when Michael Caine says, "Since you just put him down into the mud." Honorable mention was Michael Caine saying, "I can recommend a tailor." And the only reason why I say that's an honorable mention is because Michael Caine, of course, played the head of the in the Kingsman. He played the head of the Kingsman service, and of course, they went to the tailor shop to always get their suits and everything, suits and boots. So to me, that was a little fan service, but I did like that. But if I had to go with one, I have to. It's the callback. Have you had sex with my wife? Not yet.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's just kind of like, listen, I'm fucking her. I'm gonna do it. We both know it. So what the fuck are we talking about? And again,
In a sense, he's already f***ed her.
right. And in a sense, he knew the villain knew that it
Yeah.
happened. So they're both like, it's almost like saying in layman's terms, like
beautiful-
ask me, have you f***ed her? Say the line.
Have you f***ed her?
You know I have. And you know which ways I have. You know how I'm going to do it, when I'm going to do it, where I came at, where I'm going. Come on.
Yeah.
See what I did, where I came at, where I'm going? Come on. You'll get that.
It's like a beautiful game of verbal chess.
Right.
They're just playing out.
They're playing just to play because we already know who's checkmate going to be. So to me, that was my line. And of course, the only other one I did have was that not everyone passes this test, because to me, that now you're transcending a film. It's like we all are given tests, and it's not meant for all of us to pass the same test. So when you sit, it's what do you do when you pass tests? What do you do with that knowledge, and what is your purpose, and what are you here for? So to me, those were some of the best lines in the film.
Right on. That's
I need a bigger boat.
Yeah. Let's move on to, and we have, like we said, two guests, and this is cast crew for you. This is where we involve someone from the cast, someone from the crew, or a fan of the film. And today, for Tenet, we were lucky enough to have two guests come on. Two guests.
And we had somebody from the Red Squad, because they have the red and the blue, thus me and you or him. And also we have Mr. Jeremy Theobald, who actually starred in director Christopher Nolan's first film. And he is in a scene where he plays with Michael. He basically is acting with Michael Caine, and he is the waiter, if I'm not mistaken.
So up first, we have John Orantes. All right, our guest, a rising star from the film with an impressive IMDb before and after his role in Tenet. This guy is grinding. Let me take a quick breath so I can get these out. All right, he has been in Hawaii Five-0 series, SWAT, New Amsterdam, 13 Reasons Why, Ballers, Murder in the First, HBO's Looking, and more films than we could mention without this intro feeling awkwardly long. So without further introduction, welcome John Orantes. How are you doing today, John?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you guys.
I know we appreciate you. We're surprised you had time in between the IMDb. It looks like your IMDb is actually updating as we speak. They said updates like every other day, so we're definitely thrilled to have you on here. But man, we did some digging on you. So first and foremost, I'm an actor myself. We're filmmakers and everything. So definitely,
Awesome.
we appreciate you doing what you do, and that's why we want to have you on. We make it a goal to have really passionate people who care about their craft on the show. So we appreciate you joining us today. Now, one of the things we usually do is try to do a little research on our guests. And one of the things we looked at on your Facebook page, you talked about how most people, they minimize their success by they look, let's say, 5 days in the past rather than looking what they should do is look 5 years in the past and then ask themselves, where do I want to be 5 years from now? So let me ask you this. So since we're here real time and we're talking Tenet, where were you 5 years ago? Where are you now? And what do you want to be 5 years going forward?
Right. 5 years ago, I was working as a bellman at a hotel in San Francisco, doing background work, student films, little local short films, nothing major, but definitely trying to get my feet wet in the industry and try to figure out how the whole thing works, how the whole process of filmmaking, and looking forward to now, like it's pretty crazy. It's like it's a game changer for sure. You know, one day I'm sitting at the hotel telling people, hey, I want to act and I'm going to move to LA. And they're sitting there like, John, you've been saying you're going to LA for 2 years. Like, come on, man, we'll believe it when we see it. And then, the day comes and I'm like, all right, Friday's my last day. I'm moving to LA, and I made the jump. It was scary, but I had to do it. And once I got here, it was just foot to the pedal. And it's really hard sometimes because I fall into that trap too, of the whole, oh, I did an audition last week, I didn't get it, or this and that. But what have you done in the last 6 months? What have you done in the last year? What have you done in the last couple of years? Like, nothing happens overnight. It's going to take time. It takes hard work. It's not just one and done. So looking at the big picture, looking at the wider range of what has happened rather than, the few shortcomings in the last couple of weeks or whatnot, those don't really make up the big picture.
Yep. So your first IMDb credit is the Vince Vaughn Owen Wilson movie, The Internship.
Shout out Google.
Was that your first time on set?
Yeah, that was my very first time on a project. It was pretty intimidating to see the whole setup and everything. It's interesting. Actually, it was another big eye opener was that the part of the process of filmmaking is that these productions have such a big budget sometimes that they can completely eliminate aspects out of a film. So the scene that I did was a arcade scene at Pier 39 in San Francisco. And if you've seen the final movie, they replaced that entire scene. And we were there for 13 hours filming that scene. They replaced that entire scene with the strip club scene in the film, which I actually thought turned out pretty hilarious. But it was crazy just being there, seeing, the whole setup, how people work. Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, being huge fans of them and watching, Wedding Crashers and a lot of his films in the early thousands, Vince was killing it. And so leading up to that point, it was just it was hard to kind of be in the moment and without the whole excitement of, being there. But I used that as my opportunity to ask as many questions as I could and learn, okay, what are the different job descriptions on a film set? Who does what? What's your job? What's your job? What are you doing? Some people would get annoyed and be like, hey kid, I ain't got time to talk right now, because they're busy, and I get it. At the time, you're new, you're young, but yeah, that's the number one thing I will say as far as doing background work and starting out. Use that time, get off Instagram, get off your phone, use that time to stay alert and learn, okay, what's everybody's job description? What are they doing? So that you know how a film set operates if this is an industry you want to be in. That way you're ahead of the game and you really know, okay, this is what's happening.
Clearly you took what you learned there, and I believe in 2013, from what we looked at, you got your first speaking role in Repatriation. So, I mean, now your voice has been heard. First you went from being on, as they call the cutting room floor, but now your voice is being heard, like you say, throwing your name back into the hat. Tell us about that. How'd that come, and how did that feel?
I actually got Repatriation through a Skype audition, which was a process I didn't even think existed, because I was like, everything, to me, I thought everything was in person. But it was cool. It was once again intimidating. I for a very long time I struggled with being shy, and a lot of people are thinking, well, how are you an actor if you're shy? And it's like, well, you'd be surprised. I mean, that's what makes people, that's part of being a good performer, is being able to hide that. But I still have some of that, but I've definitely broken out of my shell. And with that project, I definitely struggled for sure. Showing up, I didn't have my lines memorized, showing up to set. And it was I'll just say it wasn't a learning experience mostly, but it was definitely a fun experience, because, I got to see the process as far as, changing roles now. I'm not somebody walking by in the background. I actually have more responsibility. I'm actually interacting. I'm actually creating a moment. So learning that process definitely propelled me for the next thing, for sure.
So I want to skip all the way ahead to a film you were in recently. It's in post-production right now. It's coming soon from Focus Features, which is one of my favorite distributors. Like, usually anything they put out is going to be awesome. So it's Boogie. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what it was like working with Eddie Huang?
That was actually pretty awesome. I'm not sure how much I can say about it, but as far as the process, it was pretty exciting to be there and see him work. He's unlike anybody I've worked with so far. He's just full of energy. The guy's just always having a good time. Anytime there's a moment to crack a joke, that's what he's doing. He's making everybody laugh, and it's just good vibes. It might have been a little stressful for him being his first project of, being a director on his first project like that. So there was a lot of maybe some heat coming down from, timelines and whatnot and getting stuff done. But as far as the atmosphere, it was thrilling. He's just full of energy and just a good dude all around.
Let me ask you a question. You've worked with a lot of actresses, actors, gaffers, whatever. Just, do you have any stories that you can share for our show? Any cool stories that people may not know, not about anybody in particular, but just like any cool stories from working with all these different people, like behind the sines or anything like that?
Yeah, we saw a picture of you with Tay Diggs. That was pretty cool.
Wake up, Snowflake.
Tay was dope. He was a cool dude. I will say, one of the stories, I wouldn't even know if it's a story, but I would say one of the experiences that I would say is working on Tenet. One of the coolest parts of that production, I mean, obviously the experience was amazing and I'll never forget it. But one of my favorite parts was at the end of every filming day was the drive back to the hotel, which was an 1.5-hour drive from set. So in the car, I would be with Aaron Taylor Johnson, John David Washington, sometimes Matthew Marsden. A couple times I was in the car with Robert Pattinson, and we'd hop in the SUV, all of us together, and we'd be an 1.5-hour drive. Depending on the type of shoot we did that day, sometimes we'd be exhausted and we just lights out the whole ride. And then sometimes we'd sit there and chat it up the whole ride. And most of the time I was kind of, out of the conversation just so I could observe. I like to observe a lot. I like to sit back and just watch. Sometimes I would jump in, but that was a cool experience because I got to really learn. I really got to learn what it's like to be good people, and be around good people. I mean, Aaron Taylor Johnson, he's a father. So he'd get in the car, he'd hop on the phone with his wife, talk to his kids about how their day at school went, like seeing that and, seeing just how these guys interact, the stories they talk about, their experiences in the industry, where they started, what they've been through. John talked about football a little bit. Like, it was just cool being able to get an inside peek at, how these guys, carry themselves as men and as fathers. And that was really like, okay,
You were on the Red Squad, thus me representing for the Red Squad today. Hey. I see you out there, tell us what's that like, because again, they don't tell you everything on set. I mean, even most of the actors didn't even really get a hold of the script, so you guys are only really being given direction. What it's like being out there seeing the Blue Squad, the Red Squad. What's that whole experience like? How long were you guys on set for a total, and what was that whole experience like?
And follow up on these rides home or back to the hotel, at any point did anybody in the car just break the silence and be like, all right, what the hell's going on? Because I saw the movie in chronological, or what was supposed to be chronological order. As chronological as you can get with Tenet, but I imagine with the shooting, you're all over the place with the production, so you're getting it even more disjointed. And I read that even John David Washington said that he's not even fully sure what's happening in it, and there's so many theories. So
yeah, I'm right there with you to this day. It's very confusing. I mean, I gotta watch it more than once. I'm gonna go back and see it soon. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of people. I've heard. I saw an article yesterday. Someone said they saw it 6 times already,
and they're still wondering what's going on. Right. Probably.
It's crazy because real quick, I'll say when I watched Inception recently, and I think that that movie is going on 10 years now, and and I'm still, every time I watch it, I'm still like, oh, I didn't catch that the first time. So I think that's exactly what's going on here, if not more so. But yeah, when I got to set, all I knew was my lines. As far as storyline, nada. As far as I didn't even know John was the main character. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, I knew he was in it. I knew he was a big part of it. But I mean, he was the only one that I knew was a part of it. And then I get to set and I find out Rob's in it, and all these other amazing artists, Aaron, I'm finding out all these other people are in it. So I really didn't even know the full cast. I didn't know the storyline. All I knew was my involvement. And I just thought to myself, okay, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to fit into the storyline? You know, where are things going? What happened before this? It was very confusing, but also very exciting at the same time, because it's like, all right, you know, this is your time to shine. This is your time to prove what can you do. You know what I'm saying? Can you make this work, or is your portion going to be completely 180 from whatever everything else that's going up until this point? So it's kind of like, it's a mind game. But yeah, nobody gets the script. I mean, the leads probably get the script for a limited amount of time, right? I read that Rob was locked into a room, not necessarily locked, but, you know, isolated in a room by himself. Can't leave with the script. You know, I got to keep the script here. But yeah, Chris's process is ridiculous. It's awesome though, because you see how things turn out, but it's just to think of how everything pieces together. It's pretty insane.
So how long were you on production with Tenet? What was it like working with Christopher?
I was there 2.5 weeks. Working with him was intimidating because he's Chris, you know, but he's a good dude. He's a cool dude. But he knows the thing about him, the thing that makes him so intimidating, obviously, it's not just his status as of who he is, but he knows what he wants, right? And he has it planned out years in advance. So you get to set, there's no like, okay, maybe I want this, maybe that. There's no confusion. There's no delays. We're going to get it done, and that's it, you know? So that's the cool thing, was knowing that everything was just structured and everything was in line, and everybody on set knew their job, and he kept everyone, you know, on point.
Well, as they say, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. I can definitely tell you that.
I saw it. He was putting this together in his head, at least mentally, for like 2 decades, and then worked on fleshing out the script for like 6 years. So yeah, that's extra preparation.
Definitely. I was going to ask you about this before we let you go and wrap this up. Like I said, we like to do our research and know who we have on, and that's how we know you're so passionate about film, and we definitely wish you nothing but the best with your career. I was going to say, as far as everything you have going on now, what's coming up? Because I know me and him found out you were in a film that's in the festival right now, The Fringe of Existence, and this is going through festivals right now. So tell us about that and what else you have going on.
Yeah, Fringe was a short shot probably a couple of years back, and that was directed by Felipe Cisneros, and that one it's kind of a tricky one. It's another thriller, another mind bender. It's the process. The process with that one is there's one main character jumping from individual to another individual. So we're all of us in the cast are portraying this one person through different people. So it's kind of like I would say it's kind of like a mini Chris Nolan concept in a way, because it kind of gets you in your head and you're like, okay, who's who, what's going on? So that was a fun one. That one's, like you said, that one's actually circuiting right now.
So before we close out, just want to remind our viewers to keep an eye out for The Fringe of Existence. Keep an eye out for Boogie when that comes out with Focus Features.
Thank you for being one of our first guests on Ttft, man. We definitely appreciate it. The platform is growing. We're going to do right by you, make sure people can find you. And like I say, man, we enjoy the work. Keep it up, man.
Yeah. Okay. Likewise. Thank you for having me. And you guys definitely keep working hard. And I plan to see more from you guys as well.
Thanks, John. That guy's going places.
Absolutely.
You better believe it. And up next, from across the seas over there, way, way over there. It's morning here, but it's afternoon there. I want you guys to welcome in Mr. Jeremy Theobald.
So this guest actually attended UCL with Christopher Nolan, where they worked on a number of short films together. He went on to produce Nolan's debut feature, Following, in which he also portrayed Bill as the lead role. Jeremy Theobald, a veteran actor, producer, has starred in a number of Nolan's projects since their UCL days, including Batman Begins and the film of this episode, Tenet. How you doing today, Jeremy?
I'm very well, thank you. And thank you for calling me veteran.
Well, according to your IMDb and your resume, you're quite the savvy veteran. So we appreciate you coming on with us. One thing I wanted to ask, I know we'll jump right into it. We did our research, and with you and Christopher, of course, your UCL days, when you guys first started working on shorts like Doodlebug and Larceny. Back in those days, I've read that you guys, working during the day, trying to get these films out. How can you tell us a little bit about that time with filmmaking, having a regular job, trying to do these things, and how it began a relationship between you and Christopher?
Yeah, so we met at college, at University College London, where we were both studying, and Chris's girlfriend, now wife, Emma Thomas, and producer of all of his films, was there as well. We all met through a mutual acquaintance called Ivan, who was the gaffer on Following. I was running a drama society. Chris was running the film society, and we kind of hooked up. He had a great idea for a short film last meet. He wanted to shoot it on a weekend with a couple of rolls of black and white 16 mil in one location in his flat, just off Tottenham Court Road in London, and it was a great little script. It had a twist in it. It was funny, and yeah, I jumped at the chance. I'd not done a lot of film acting before, so it was a really steep learning curve for me. And that worked out okay. We did a little film festival in the UK for short films, and then Chris came to me afterwards with the script for Following and said, "Look, I want you to play the lead in this. I'd kind of sort of like written it with you in mind, and would you help me produce it as well?" And by that, it was, do you have access to locations? Can we use your flat? Have you got friends who are actors who might want to give up a year of their time to be able to do this? And yeah, I mean, the story of Following is pretty well told. It was made for $6,000. We filmed it on 1 day a week on Saturdays for almost a year, and then it kind of took off from there when it went to the San Francisco Film Festival, in which I literally carried the prints over on the plane with me, and from there it got bought by Next Wave Films, blown up to 35 mil and taken to Toronto Film Festival, and it got sold there for distribution in the US and in Europe, and that was kind of the start of Chris's career, which was as we all know now has been rather successful.
Wow,
rather.
And I just want to be clear: did you say his first budget ever was $6,000?
Yeah, it was $6,000. So no one got paid at the time, and we borrowed equipment from the Film Society at UCL, and Chris bought one roll of black and white 16mm film a week and processed it and telecined it onto Digibeta, and then put together a sort of like a rough cut each week. Looked at the rushes, saw what we needed to do, what we needed to cover, and then eventually put it all together on Digibeta as a final edit, and then outputted it to VHS, sent it to film festivals when there was no film freeway in those days, and that's when we then had to, when it was accepted, we then had to go back and do the neg cut and do prints, and that cost another like $4,000 or something like that. So then we had to raise some more money. The only thing that we spent money on was the film and some cheese and some bread for catering.
And it's now recognized as part of the Criterion Collection, correct?
It's on DVD. It came out on the Criterion Collection on DVD in the US, and they did a special timed version where they actually re-edit it and put it together in chronological order. And I think that there's an interview with Chris on that as well, talking about how we made it. I think it's on Amazon and on iTunes in the US as well, available for purchase and download.
Yeah, I saw with the if you have the IFC Movie Pass, you can watch it on Amazon Prime. So definitely check it out. So with Christopher Nolan's films, like I noticed you mentioned time in that one, and with Memento, time seemed to be a pretty big theme in that. And then of course with Tenet, time plays a huge role in it. Is that it seems to be a running theme in his films? Is that something that always interested him?
Yeah, absolutely. What happens in Following is there's a fractured narrative. So there's chronologically, there are 3 timelines that play throughout the film, and you cut in between those, and you start to be able to piece together the whole story from that. And that's something that Chris was really interested in, right from the off. And he's played with that sort of fractured timeline before, and he's played with it in Memento, and he's done it, in other films. And with Tenet, I think what is unique is that for the first time, he's actually taking time and making it go forwards and backwards, which is something that you can only do in film. The time travel is one thing, but you can't. Nobody saw things go backwards and forwards until somebody actually filmed something and made that happen. So. It's something that's been keeping him awake at night for a few years now.
There were no VFX effects with that scene, the car scene, to where like they brought in professional drivers from all over the world, and you probably know this. There were no VFX. Is that normally his style, or does he really want to try to keep it as as visual as possible, so you don't think anything crazy is going on?
Yeah, I mean, Chris is fairly well known for eschewing the CGI approach and to try and do as much in camera as possible. And I think one of the main stunt drivers was Jim, the guy who flipped the truck.
And Batman, Dark Knight.
Dark Knight, the guy who flipped. So he was there, and they shut down like a 5-mile section of freeway in Estonia for 3 weeks to be able to shoot that. And I don't know how many lanes it was, but it's 5 miles long that they had, and they just blocked it off at the end, and they said, this is your parking lot, this is your playground for the next 3 weeks. Get on with it. So, but to your question, so it was all filmed, and a lot of the reverse stuff that you see is not reversed in post. It's actually in the IMAX camera and the Panasonic cameras. They were running the film backwards through the camera and just filming it like that. So the shot of the bow, they're on the icebreaker, and you have a shot looking down on the bow, and the waves are splashing backwards over it. Yeah, that's all just done with an IMAX being poked out of a little porthole and running the film backwards through that camera. It's not a post-production effect. Awesome. Which is, insane.
Yeah. Now, Jeremy, I wanted to talk about this because, again, all of us have favorite actors, directors, people that we want to work with. Now, in 1998, of course, you do The Following, you get the lead in that film. And then fast forward is 2005, you just brought up Batman, so that was a good segue. You're doing Batman Begins. How does something like that transpire to where there's a gap of the working, but then, of course, you still have the relationship with Christopher? So do you guys keep in touch? Was there a friendship? What transpired to get this thing going?
Yeah, we still we keep in touch. One of the really beautiful and touching things about Chris and Emma is that they stayed in touch with all of us who worked on Following, and for every film since Batman Begins, we've all been invited to the premiere. So we meet up every couple of years, and we go and sit in an IMAX theater and watch Chris's film before, for anyone else sees it. Go to the party afterwards and meet up and chat and say, that was really interesting. How did you do this? And and so we're still in touch. And it's a question of just sort of when I have time and when he has time and when he has space to be able to, to give me one of those little roles. He's used his uncle a fair amount as well. John Nolan was the police officer in Following, and he was in Batman Begins. Lucy was in Batman Begins, who plays the blonde in Following. And I think John was in Dunkirk as well. So, it's nice to be able to meet up and jump back into working with the guy again. It's tremendous fun every time you go on set with him. it's a little peculiar to go back on set, and Chris doesn't have mobile and he doesn't really use email, so all my sort of like conversations with Emma on email, and then with the casting director through my agent, and when you're going to turn up and stuff like that, and you go and do your fitting in a sort of hotel in London, and then you just your car, his call times are ridiculous. So a car come and picks you up at 5 a.m. from your hotel, and you're bleary-eyed, and you're in makeup, sitting next to John David Washington, going, "Oh hi," at 5:30 in the morning, and then you're in costume, and you walked onto set, and Chris is there, and it's 6:30, and he just comes up and gives you a big bear hug, like nothing's changed.
Awesome.
So it's fantastic.
With the following, like you said, you're doing it in between day jobs on a small budget, and then you go from that to something like Tenet, which is like one of the largest budget films ever made. Can you just talk about the trials and tribulations of what because I think it's helpful for other filmmakers, because everybody has to start there, where they have to be 100% in regular life to make things keep going until the dream turns into a reality, and they're given 100% to the dream as well. So that gets really strenuous, I'm sure, and I think it's helpful to hear from somebody that's made it to the other side, what that experience was like for you, like on following, and then just witnessing firsthand that evolution from working on a film like Following to working on a film like Tenet. How much still remains the same in that process, even with the money involved?
Yeah, sure. So, okay, let's go back to the beginning and talk about Following and the way we made that and how we made that. So we made it with what we had that was available. So it was $6,000. It was an incredibly small cast. We had one camera that was a 16 mil. We did it in black and white because we didn't really have that many lights or any lights to be able to do it. We used a lot of natural light. So the film noir sort of style of thriller really worked with that. Things like when you're doing really low budget stuff, it's really difficult to make guns look realistic because they are always filled in at the end. Every time you point one or wave one around, it looks like it's plastic. It doesn't look real. They don't make the right sort of sound. You don't get the sort of right reaction when they go off. Mm-hmm. So use something else. So Chris uses a hammer for the main weapon in Following because that's readily available and it's cheap, and you can make a rubber one that looks really realistic.
Sure.
And so those things are about working with what you have available. It's about making films. Filmmakers make films. They go out and they make films with whatever they can.
Yeah.
And you don't have to wait for funding to come along to be able to get your $2 million project off the ground. Mm-hmm. We made a film for $6,000 and it got bought and it got distributed. Yes, times are different now. We were particularly lucky to be arriving in the time of guerrilla filmmaking of El Mariachi and Blair Witch Project and stuff like that. But it is still possible to get your stuff seen. What's the difference? Chris says that the biggest change for him was going from Following to Memento with a professional crew, which was $8 million or thereabouts as a budget, as opposed to him having the camera on his shoulder and working with friends from college. That was the biggest change. Everything after that, up to Batman Begins, is just a matter of scale. Mm-hmm. And Batman Begins was insane. For the film, for the scene that I was in, we were in Cardington in Bedfordshire, which is an old airship hangar. So this airship hangar is like half a mile long and 300 feet wide and 150 feet tall. So the Opera House, the frontispiece of the Opera House was built inside that aircraft hangar. It's not a real opera house. It was built by the carpenters and and the set builders in there, so that they could do a night shoot during the day because it costs less and everyone doesn't have to stay up overnight and get tired. And there were, hundreds of people working on that set. And it was very structured as a way of working. And Chris talked about the fact that, he was extremely proud of the way that they worked and the way that Wally Pfister shot it. But what they wanted to do, what he did as a reaction to that, to go to Prestige afterwards, is to try and work with a much smaller crew in a much more spontaneous way. And he's tried to take that through a lot of the films since. And certainly the feeling that I got when I came onto set with Tenet was this was just a really tight group, a small, really tight group of people. They were all fantastically welcoming to me. Half of them, most of them didn't know who I was. A few of them had been following, a few of them knew that I've been working with Chris since the beginning. But a lot of them didn't know who I was, but they were all really kind, really welcoming. It's fantastic to have you on board. But it was just a really tight ship. And Chris talks about trying to create this arena in which performers can really be spontaneous, get their stuff out there, go to the edges of their performance, because that's where the gold is. That's what's really special. And that's what you can take out of filmmakers right from a $6,000 movie all the way up to, whatever Tenet cost, $225 million or something like that. It's about the performances. It's about creating that space in which actors can really do something special.
With a film like Tenet, and with most of Nolan's films, from Prestige to Inception to Memento, if there's one, he probably has the record for most fan theories out there to these films. Everybody leaves out thinking one thing or another, and I know this hasn't been released everywhere, so there are no spoiler alerts here, but even John David Washington, you mentioned him earlier, was saying, hey, listen, I had to read it 2 or 3 times. I don't even know what to think. Now, he's the lead. He's the protagonist of the film. And so when you see something like that, like without you giving anything away, if you, after your screening of it, you walking out, what did it leave you thinking or feeling?
So just to go back a second, when Chris first gave me the script of Following, like I said, it's got a fractured narrative in it, and there are 3 timelines that run through it, and I was reading it going, okay, I kind of get it, but as an actor, I had to pull it apart, put it back together in chronological order so that I could understand my character arc and what I was supposed to be doing on any particular day. And Tenet is several orders of magnitude more complicated than that. So I'm not surprised that John David doesn't get it entirely. I didn't get it entirely. I bought the script now. Book now so that I can read it again, and I want to go and see it a few more times.
The ride home, me and him left the movies. We were like, so we're very educated. We've seen a lot of films. We've done films. What happened? I wanted him to speak first, so then I can speak. So I'm glad you felt kind of the same.
And it was a quiet ride home.
Yeah, and it's a film that I'm gonna keep on watching. It's gonna stay with you for years. You're just gonna keep on discovering stuff about it and reading stuff about it and thinking about it, and it's and that's kind of the beauty of the films that he makes, is that they are these enormous immersive pieces of art in which you can just you can jump in, you can watch it once and go, that was great, or you can spend hours and hours thinking about it. I'm really going for it. My strange take on it is that it's kind of a love story without trying to reveal too many spoilers. The relationship between Elizabeth Debicki and Kenneth Branagh is very similar to the one between the blondes and the bald guy and Following, and that he has a hold over her, and there's that sort of like abusive relationship that's going on. And John David Washington as the protagonist is, goes in and has to break that up. I think that's about all I can say now. Okay. Otherwise, we are going to get into the realm of the plot. What happened?
Moving on outside of Tenet, so according to IMDb, at least, it looks like you took a 10-year hiatus and you're producing. You returned to produce Convergence, which is now available on Amazon Prime if you want to check it out. That was in 2019, where you also produced a short film, Custodian. And both films you starred in as well. How different is the experience between showing up to set as an actor and showing up wearing the producer hat as well?
I've been lucky enough to work with directors whereby it's a collaborative process. So as an actor, you get to have a voice and you get to have a say in the way that the whole thing is shot and put together, and the design, and and even down to the set dressing. Is sort of like, do you think your character would have these books on the shelf, or do you think you would have this, or what is it? What would they wear today? And looking through costumes and different shirts and jackets and things like that. And certainly with Steve Johnson on Convergence, it was an incredibly collaborative process, and he wanted me on board as a producer because he wanted my input on everything, from the plot and the writing and the structure of the script, down to as I said, costume and set dressing and particular shots and acting. It can be tough sometimes because you get too caught up in that sort of stuff and you don't do enough. You then have to remove yourself from that and then get yourself in character and think about the theme that you're actually doing, and try and be in the moment and spontaneous and feel all of those things. So it can be tough, but I think it's incredibly rewarding most of the time because you have far more skin in the game, effectively.
Yeah.
I have to say congratulations on Convergence, because it's not easy to take 10 years off and then, because at least from producing and acting, then come back in with, like you said, with both your hands in the pot making this thing happen. You can't truly flesh out your character. It's like you're trying to give all to everybody. You're responsible for so many things. So when I find out and I do my research and I figure out that you swept film festivals, a lot of them with this film, to me it's even more, just something that you should be paid homage for, because I know how hard it is. So talk about, saying, hey, I don't know what's going to happen with this film, but I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to produce it. I'm in it. I'm doing everything. And then to see the success that it's had, how rewarding is that?
It's fantastic. I mean, there isn't much of a greater feeling than going to a film festival and being awarded best film, because it's just the most enormous relief that you find other people who actually really value your work and the amount of time and effort that you put into it. It's not an easy watch as a film if you want to pick it up on Amazon Prime. And I'll let you into a secret. It's another $6,000 movie as well. So it's great to have people just sort of appreciate your work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so before we wrap up the interview, I just want to remind everyone that's listening to, first of all, to thank you to Jeremy for joining us, and to check out Convergence on Amazon Prime. Check out Following on Amazon Prime. I definitely will be checking them out. What other projects can we look out for in the future?
I made a short film called Celtic Cross in Washington, D.C. in January earlier this year. And that has been written up as a feature now. We're hoping to get that funded and made next year as well. So the script for that has been doing some screenwriting festivals and it's been doing pretty well. So, yeah, we're hoping to get that out. I think Celtic Cross has got its first festival screening in South Africa, but it's an online festival, so you can buy tickets for that and watch it online as well.
Before you go, Jeremy, I just want to tell you, you are our type of guy, because with me and him, again, we love every aspect of film. We always say here, if our bills could be paid, we do this for free, because again, I'm just listening to you like you have the same look on your face from the $6,000 budget to the $205 million budget. Like, hey, I'm working, I'm doing what I love. This is my life. This is my passion. And these are the type of people we want to have on Ttft, because this is our passion. So I definitely want to thank you for coming on and remaining one of the true thespians that we have in the field.
thanks very much, guys, for having me on. It's been a fantastic time chatting with you, talking film with you, and talking Chris's films with you as well.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, and all of the continued success in the future to you.
Yes, and have a great afternoon. We're going to have a great morning, but you have a great afternoon out there.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so next up we have room for improvement. If you could change one thing. I don't really have anything. I just have an explanation for why I don't have anything. Because what has happened has already happened anyway. So is this really the episode to change anything or offer any kind of hindsight? The only scene when I was watching it, and I felt like, so in the movie when the protagonist and Neil are walking, discussing the mission about crashing the plane, that's the only scene that I had a problem with, but only for a limited amount of time because I was proved wrong. Because when I first watched it, I was like, this feels like way too typical of an action film. The way they're walking, they're this real slick about dialogue back and forth, planning, and then right at the point in the conversation when they get to the third guy who enters the conversation, sitting on the bench waiting for them, it's now his turn to speak. They've now somehow coincidentally timed it to where they get to him and it's his turn to talk, and he gets up and just joins the conversation.
That was the only thing you mentioned on the ride home. It was not a question. You made sure you mentioned that for you.
Then I thought about it. Like my problem with that was it seems like that's too coincidental. In any other movie it would have been too coincidental. But in Tenet, Neil has already been through all of this
1 billion times.
So of course he could have timed that conversation. So I was wrong and Christopher Nolan was right, and I have nothing that I could think of that I'd want to change about that. I wish they'd explain a little bit less.
Yeah. Which is a very nice segue, because the only thing I would change about this, if I could change it, because it's already happened, is if I'm going to spend, as a filmmaker and as a lover and watcher of film, if I'm going to spend 2.5 hours in a film, I don't expect you to spoon feed me, but when I leave, I need to be able to at least have some causality of what really truly did happen. I'm not asking for a closing answer to me. So I feel like, if I'm being honest, and if we're going to be honest on this program, the show that we do, that we have to give them our honest opinions, is that I felt like he didn't give enough, because as you mentioned, Michael, you feel like Michael Caine's performance suffered from it. Some actors are going to thrive on that moment, some won't, and you can best believe that some fans and some movie watchers are going to be like, I came to the movies to see this, it looked dope, but I mean, what happened?
The Twilight girls were
right. So them. But even yes, them, but us, we paid attention the entire time. There was not one time we looked at our phones. I don't even think we blinked that many times, and we still walked out like, whoa, are we really here or something? So to me, if I would change anything, it would be that, okay, if you're going to do that to me, if that would have took place over 90 minutes, I wouldn't even be complaining right now. But if I'm staying 2.5 hours, you owe me a little bit more than, hey, you put it together. Like, no, I no.
I do disagree with you on that, and I actually have my rebuttal for why I disagree already.
Wait a minute, so you knew I was going to say this? Patterson?
No, maybe, but maybe that's kind of with me. No,
I have the rebuttal. I just said the shit.
My rebuttal is actually in the Fxxks Given, like how many Fxxks are given, and why I would recommend it. But I guess that is because every time we make a film, I'm usually leaning more towards the less information, more abstract, and you're always the one that comes in with the voice of reason. It's like, all right, hear me out. You can nix this if you want, but what do you think about just dropping them this little morsel of information or something for them to chew on?
We did that with Kill, yeah.
So I totally get where that is fitting for you, and I'm sure that most people would agree, but I really like confusion even at the end of a movie, but I'll save my rebuttal for the Fxxks Given.
Well, introduce us then. What is our next segment?
Right the into Fxxks Given. How many do we give this thing?
Bang bang.
0 out of 5 a fistful of a handful of How many use? How many?
All right, so for me, since you have your rebuttal already written down from the first time before we saw Tenet, for me, I did an average. So visually, I gave this 5 like visually 5. Hear me out.
Oh,
visually,
okay. So we're gonna get to an average.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did an average. So visually, I gave it 5. For the acting, I gave 4. I gave 4 across the board for everybody's performance. So Michael Caine me to death at that point. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Would have been a solid 5 if it got caned.
Storyline, we agree to disagree. I gave it 3 because again, if 2.5 hours, I mean, that's just my opinion from one director to another.
Killmonger all over again.
Overall, I gave the film 3.5.
3.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Overall 3.5. Yes.
I give Tenet 4.5. For most of the movie, you don't have answers, just a lot of clues. Mm-hmm. Even after the movie, and I'm proving this is my rebuttal that I had written down last night. Even after the movie, you don't really have answers so much as you have theories. So you even leave the movie with theories. With that said, I still felt full when we left. For the entirety of the film, from literally the first frame to the credits, I was entertained, intrigued, invested throughout the entire thing. It was perfectly paced, and I left feeling full. I left. There were moments where I was blown away, and even at the end when I didn't have all the answers, I didn't feel cheated because you go to a movie sometimes not to get answers. Sometimes you just go to be entertained, and for me, entertainment isn't reliant upon how sure I am about something, especially for the first movie to come out in the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic world that we live in. Get used to not being sure about shit. And this is a great movie to kind of at least in reality we're not even really that entertained. At least this film had the decency to entertain us without answers. Reality just with us with no answers.
It made us question it. I will say that it made us talk about it, and that's one thing I can't disagree with you on. That you will leave with theories, and at the end of the day, the sign of a great film is a film that you can watch over and over again, and this will be one of them because again, you will catch things each time.
Like he didn't limit it. He could have given the answer because I believe he knows what in his mind what the actual theory is, Christopher Nolan. But that would have been cheating the audience out of all of the possible answers that they're coming up with.
Right. I just wish he would just not cheated me out of the extra 30 minutes.
Okay.
That's all I'm asking. Just drop the time.
You wanted it to be shorter.
Right. And then I'd be like, all right, cool. I'll go home and figure this out. But now I got to go home and take a nap. Yeah. I'm older now, man. I'm wiser. I'm vintage. So there we go, man. Hey, that was Fxxks Given. David, tell us what we have coming next week.
Oh my God. Next week, I am so excited. Next week is...
Is it The Walking Dead?
You, man. It is The Living Wake. A wonderful, awesome, fantastic movie. Honestly, the #1 film out of any film in the history of films, as far as I am concerned.
So, are you coming in as the cast crew and you for next week? Are you doubling up? Are we interviewing you for the segment next week?
No.
Are you sure?
This film is it's written and stars Mike O'Connell, and his character K. Roth Banu is just, it is out of this world. It's just, I highly recommend it. We'll be talking about that next week. It also stars Jesse Eisenberg and Jim Gaffigan. But honestly, Mike O'Connell shines in the film as the lead star, as the person that penned the crazy dialogue and insane, surreal reality that this film takes place in. It is a comedy like no other, and I could not recommend it highly enough. I cannot wait to talk about it next week.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, man. So, hey, listen, guys, you know what? That was the time. That was the show. And that's the
Fxxking trailer. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like. Be sure to share. Please. I'm sorry I'm pointing so like this. But do all that and find us in all these places. And have a wonderful week, everybody. We will see you next Thursday.
Hey, the booth needs us. Show, man. All right.
That's the trailer.